Hey, everyone. I'm really excited for today's guest, Mitchell England. We had a great conversation. Mitchell shares a story about how hanging out at the airport, what he learned so much from different entrepreneurs that weren't working normal hours, and just, his curiosity and what that led to. He talks about when he took a major leap, him and his wife were on board and his wife supported him and just had the courage to make a major shift in his career and his business to support his family. He talks about how different areas of life and the purpose behind them and how your work purpose might support other parts of life. So that was great. And that's going to apply to anyone, and how that might change depending on the season of life you're in, how old you are, what your age your kids are, things like that. And then at the end, he tells a really cool story about just meeting the founder of Red Robin and the story that he had, which you're not going to want to miss. So very excited for this episode. We're going to get into it and you're really going to enjoy it. I am very excited for today's guest, Mr. Mitchell England. Mitchell, how are you doing today?
Good, Phil. Thanks for having me, man. I'm super excited to be on.
Yeah, I'm really excited about today's discussion. Just again, I say this some other times, some of the pre-show, like I'm getting a hint of what I think we're going to talk about here, and it's pretty neat. So for the listeners, Mitchell is the owner of Cadia Capital Group, real estate investing, and we're going to talk about that, but also like the why behind the why, as Mitchell said on the pre-show. So I'm excited to get into that. Mitchell, most importantly, he made the comment, family is everything. He's married to his wife for 11 years. They have 2 girls, 10 and 7. So we might hit on that too. But Mitchell, you've had a lot of success. I will talk about it later too, I'm sure, but also an author of a book, 0 to 100 Units, which I have read myself and has a lot of great content in it. And we'll talk more about that later. But tell me a little bit about your story. How did we get to where we are today? Kind of what formed you?
Yeah, the story could go on and on and on in tons of different directions, but I'll give you kind of a synopsis of my background. I started out early in high school. Working at the airport actually was my first sort of I always bring that up because it was like my first job that started to really form me. I was around a bunch of pilots and people that were flying airplanes on a Tuesday while everybody was working. So I'd say that was one of my biggest ahas, was working there. And being around these folks. I came from a middle-class family. We lived up in the country, about 3 miles up a little road called Snowden. So kind of I'd say humble to medium beginnings. But my first jump into this entrepreneurial life, or at least the mindset, was working at the airport. I remember watching these guys are flying around on a Tuesday while everybody's working. I'm going, what are you guys doing? What books are you reading? Where do you work? What's happening? So
is it like a private airport?
It's a private airport. Well, excuse me. It was a public airport, but small. It felt private. It was just locals. And so I always loved aviation. I got into aviation really early. That was kind of my chosen career path early on. But what I really learned was the value of freedom, the value of being able to do what you want. And I thought that was so neat, learning from these guys and gals. Like I said, flying on a Tuesday or flying during the week while everybody else was sort of going to the 9 to 5. So early on, my dad worked for the railroad. My mom was stay at home mainly and worked later on. Very kind of traditional family, but I was also escaping to the airport and learning from these entrepreneurs. And so that was probably the seed to my, hey, there's a different way. From that, I got book recommendations and I got to ride around the country in airplanes and talk to folks and see what people do. That was I would say the seed to where I am today was that job.
Yeah. It's amazing how, whether it's, I don't want to say luck because you were there, but then you were curious, but the power of our associations, whether that when we're younger and we're in a situation, you were put in that situation, but then you had to act and take advantage of the situation, ask questions, be curious, dig in. Or today, let's say people don't have those networks and associations. Maybe they need to go seek out these people, these associations, these networks more intentionally. But it sounds like that formed you. So you're younger, you're starting to kind of, it sounds like you're just curious. You're just really interested, and you're also diving into self-development a little bit, I'm assuming at this time. So what were kind of some of the big moves that you started to make, whether that's career, was that real estate, your purpose behind all those moves? What did that look like?
Yeah. So you're exactly right. I was diving into myself. One of the very first books, like a lot of, I'm sure your guests and listeners, was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It changed the way I thought about, what's possible. Right around that time, I went to college. I was 19. I actually bought my first piece of property when I was 19. Sold a motorcycle for a down payment, bought it on a seller contract, super $15,000 piece of land. Didn't know what I was doing, but I thought, hey, everyone's getting in this game. I should too. So, my early 20s was, I'd say early to mid 20s was like, working different jobs, as well as investing in real estate on the side. I didn't get much traction. I'd say I had a couple wins, a couple losses. I knew it was like a thing I could do. And I knew that it was the way to freedom, or at least I thought it was, but I just didn't have the right formula, the right strategy. I was kind of all over the place, buying single family homes, buying land. I was very speculative. I don't think I understood the difference between being an investor and being a speculator. And so I'd say like those years were good because I was getting some wins, getting some losses, getting feedback, but also challenging because I wasn't getting the traction. And then just to add to that, I think one of the things I missed or I wanted while I was working these jobs, I was in the Navy early on, then I ended up deploying as a contractor and I worked in the med tech industry. And what I realized though is I was anything but free. I was like the very opposite end of free, like go join the military. There's no freedom there. Right. So, but I wanted it. And so I kept coming back to real estate as like, it's gotta be the way.
How did you define freedom at that time?
Yeah.
And how do you define it now? How has that changed? Like, what do you mean by that?
I think early on, I just wanted to be like retired. I was so sick of working. I thought freedom was just like doing, not working at all. I was very 0 1s. Today, I think I define freedom as having the opportunity to do what you love, when you love, with the people you enjoy, but also being able to leave, to be able to slow down, to be able to spend time with your family, to be able to drive your kiddo to school, pick them up, take them to soccer practice, to go camping when you want to go. Like, I think today I look at it a little bit differently because I don't want to be done. I don't want to be retired. I don't want to be stagnant.
Yeah. So interesting.
But I want to choose when I work and when I don't. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just listening to a podcast, Morgan Housel's Psychology of Money. And he's like, what is financial freedom? What is wealth? And it's really like, it's independence. Yeah. It's getting to do what you want. And I think there's also this evolution of freedom for people that, I mean, it's so interesting how you said it. It's because I just wanted to be retired. And people, whatever they're doing, they want to build this business, they want to build real estate, whatever it is for them, they want to be financially free so they can just retire and sit on the beach, and then they'll do it for 2 days and they'll be like, okay, what am I going to do next? Or maybe it's 3 months, maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's longer. And I think there's just this perception of what freedom is. And then when you're like, if you have the motivation to go get that freedom, honestly, you're probably going to have the motivation to go do other things too. And it sounds like you've evolved the same way.
I think so. And I think what people don't realize that are working a W-2 that you hate, right? You just can't stand. Naturally, I think that the want or the desire to just be done and be totally retired is like a real thing. Like if you're sitting in traffic and you go into your W-2 and you hate your boss, you go home to a family that doesn't see you barely during the week, like of course you want to be totally done. But I think there's this middle ground that exists that I didn't know existed. And that is I choose when I want to work, but I'm still there for my family, in a big, big way.
Yeah.
That to me is this existence that's so fun because I love my job and I love my family. I get to hang out with them. I get to do both of them. I couldn't see that reality before I left.
Yeah. No, I think, again, as I said, I think it just evolves over time, and certainly mine has evolved too, to like my definition to where I think the bigger thing for me then is, okay, I think about purpose and like what, like purpose, I have kind of outlined purposes for different areas of my life, what those are. So whether that's my health, my family, spiritually, business, or meaningful work. And my purpose for real estate, if you will, or entrepreneurship early on was definitely, I don't want to work anymore. I want to retire. But that has evolved to how can I have an impact with what I'm doing, with what I've been blessed with, what I've been given, like how can I go impact other people and help them out? And there's more to that. But how do you think about, so your business, you have very successful real estate now, and we can jump back to pivotal moments if you'd like. But if you think about your business and what you're doing, you talked about freedom, but like, how do you think about the purpose of what you're doing?
I think that someday I'll look back and I'll have completed my purpose. I think purpose is a lifelong concept. Uh, right now, today, I think my purpose is very focused around my kids. I look into their eyes, my 7, my 10-year-old. They want nothing more than to have me with them and around them. When I had my first one, Evie, 10 years ago, I realized that like there was the first time I felt like I was here for something. And I think that naturally we're wired for that. I think most people are. And what I think is really sad is that a lot of parents don't get to be with their kids. They're gone during the work, or their kids are, at daycare or at school or whatever. And none of those things are bad in itself. But like, I wanted to be different. I wanted to, my purpose was like to have this amazing relationship with my wife, as well as really be there for my children. Now, I think purpose changes over time, because as I raise them and as I'm there for them, their lives are going to get bigger and busier, and my purpose will change. That'll probably change more to, hey, let's really focus on my wife, my relationship there. I think that's really important. But also, like, what purpose comes into play? And I think there's a bigger picture here. As I grow wealth and I grow cash flow, how can I help other people? How can I give back? What nonprofits can I participate in, either with my time or my money? I don't have a vision for generational wealth to make the Englands rich for years and years and years. I think it's probably more based on a life where I'm fulfilling my purpose on the way up. I'm building a castle, and then I'm giving a lot of that away, and I'm supporting foundations or organizations that can better the people coming up and behind me. I know that my kids' inheritance is based on how much love I give them, how I teach them to communicate, their emotional IQ, their ability to navigate the world, their ability to be entrepreneurs, their ability to be scrappy. It's not going to be based on millions and millions of dollars. And so I haven't told them that, but
dude,
but it's not going to be based on money.
I was getting chills from that, because, I was at an event recently where they talked about like these different questions. Like, okay, if you could choose, like, if your 2 daughters are well connected in 40 years from now to each other, or do they have all the money they ever want, or, would ever need, which one would you choose? Right. And I think the question's obvious. Like, you would want them to have a good relationship 100%. With each other. Maybe, do you want them to have a loving family, if they're blessed with that, things like that.
100%.
You would always pick those things over the guaranteed 12% returns or the guaranteed cash flow. And I think we put so much pressure on, like, what are we going to give our kids financially, when that's not what really matters. I mean, it just isn't. So I love it. And I think thinking, first of all, purpose changes over time, and you kind of said like seasons of life. Like right now, you're obviously growing your business, but you're very conscious of your core purpose. Like that's, I think, in support of your core purpose, which is your family. And not that it won't be your core purpose in the future. Your family won't be, but it might require less of your time in the future, where then you can take that time. Maybe you can pour it more into your business, your employees, whatever that looks like. So I think the recognition of the season of life that you're in is really, really important. And I think, that whole clip was good. I would encourage people to go back and listen to Mitchell talk about that, how he said that a couple of different times, because that was impactful stuff. So I appreciate you sharing that. Talk about, through this journey, how important has clarity been to what you're doing? And even like the big, were there any big courageous steps you took to get you to the next level that you just had hesitated for a while, or maybe overthought or overanalyzed?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest steps, and I think a lot of people go through this, is leaving the security, or the illusion of security of a W-2. When I was, I think I was about 28 or 29, my wife and I had been married for a couple of years. We had a little one, Evie. She was maybe about a year old or so. I was working a med tech job, and I was paid, $75,000 in the Midwest, which was fine. With benefits, it was comfortable, but it was the least fulfilling thing ever at work. And then by the time I got home, I was so exhausted that I didn't have even the energy to be a good dad. and or a good husband. And so I think that one of the courageous steps we took was leaving that job, and we left without a lot. I had probably under maybe around 40,000 saved up. We moved into a camping trailer. Actually, lived in a camping trailer, rented out the house. We had a couple rentals, a little bit of cash flow, and a little bit of cash. But I realized that as I got older and expenses grew and my family grew, there was a door, but the door was closing for the opportunity to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at my wife going, look, if we don't leave this year, I think the door might close. And she's like, what does that mean? I'm like, well, we're going to have another baby. We're going to want a bigger house. The car is going to break down. Something's going to happen to where the need for that consistent income is going to grow so strong that we can't escape. And so thank God I married the girl I did, by the way, for multiple reasons. But one of the reasons was she was like, let's do it. And so we were in the Midwest at the time. We moved from Minnesota to Seattle with a beat up expedition in a used camper. We moved into the KOA in Kent, Washington, which I don't recommend. It was pretty rough, but it was a courageous time of our lives. It was some of the best times of our lives, but also it was that entrepreneurial leap. It was that sort of J curve that people reference when talking about business, but it was like my life. My life was a J curve. I had to jump off in order to live a bigger life. And so I think that was a moment where I felt we had to be courageous.
So first of all, you talked about W-2, and I personally don't think all W-2s are bad. If people are feeling fulfilled and purposeful at what they're doing, not everyone's made to be an entrepreneur, but if you're in your W-2 and it's not fulfilling, it's taking your energy away from you.
Right.
It isn't supporting your family life. Like you said, it was draining your energy before you went home, which means you were a worse dad because of it. And again, it wasn't supporting. If you go back to the prior discussion, like family, it was making it worse. The other thing I think is so important for people to really think about is if you don't love what you do, if you can't go home to your kids and feel good about what you do, they're seeing it. Like you're impacting what they're going to do and who they're going to work for when they're older. It's like if you go home and you complain about what you do every single day, they're going to run away. You're normalizing that, I guess is what I'm saying. So I think just the recognition of that. And then also there's no perfect time for this stuff, right? Like you could have made more money to save more. You could have made a lot of excuses or came up with a lot of reasons to let's wait 2 more years until I save more money, because then I'll be able to do it and I'll have more security. At the same time, you recognize, if I wait 2 years, I'm probably going to be more dependent on this. So there's just never a perfect time and it doesn't mean quitting your W-2. It means if you've been thinking about something that you want to do for a long time, whatever that is in any area of life, like there's no perfect time. The perfect time is now. So I just appreciate that kind of the awareness of that to make that move. So well done.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I think it was, and I like what you said about W-2, by the way. I don't think W-2 is inherently bad, but if you're in your job and you're not fulfilled and you're not fulfilling your purpose and you're frustrated, that's where I think it gets bad, because life's short. So how long are you going to do what you hate for somebody you don't respect, like a boss you don't respect or doesn't respect you? I think that's where people get upside down. And there's a lot of people in our country like that. There's also a lot of people who are like, look, I'm a nurse. I love it. I've always wanted to be it. I'm fulfilled, or a teacher or whatever that is.
Absolutely.
And that's great. So it just depends on the person, I think.
Yeah, 100%. So thinking about your story a little bit more. So you talked about the pilots, right? So not the pilots, being close to the airport early on.
Yeah.
You captured a lot of education and it's like your network. How has that thought process evolved over time from where early on that was your network that was helping you? What has that looked like? Has that continued to be a priority, or have you kind of gotten away from that?
As far as like my network?
Yeah. How are you prioritizing that? And is that a big part of your growth, I guess?
Yeah, I think what I've realized is that as cliche as it sounds, it's like they always say like the net worth or even your behaviors is sort of like the combination of the 4 or 5 people you're around. I don't know the exact quote, but I think that one of the ultimate hacks of being human is surrounding yourself by people that you want to be like. Not that you're not just because you work with them or just because you went to high school with them or just because they're your family or whoever that is. Like, and I say family with an asterisk. I mean, obviously we're around our family, but I think that if you want to hack your own growth, surrounding your people with a network that's already where you want to go is, like, for me, the number one way to do it. Yeah,
Yep.
we read all the books, join the mastermind, go to the course, the program, all that stuff. But humans want to fit in naturally. They want to be a part of a tribe and fit in. And so if you're around a group, say you want to run a marathon, right? And you're around, now you join a group in town that are runners, and that's what they value. That's what they pay attention to. That's what they talk about. That's right. That's the conversation. That's the behavior. That's the activity. All of a sudden, you're going to start to see. You're going to start running for some reason. Well, you want to fit in. That's a hack because I'm influenced by these individuals without even trying. Yeah. And therefore my behavior changes subconsciously.
Yeah. And I think the conviction around the impact of this is real when you created your own mastermind group, right? So you have 0 to 100. You wrote the book with a couple of others, and you guys have created a mastermind group. Basically, I mean, maybe it's called something else, but basically a mastermind group that brings people in, and you're mentoring. They are part of a group that's trying to grow together, right? But you're kind of helping lead and facilitate those folks to help them with whatever their goals are. So I think that just illustrates, by the way, check it out if you're a listener interested in growing a real estate portfolio. But that just illustrates, like, you're doing that because of the conviction on your network and associations. And like you said, you become with whom you associate. If you look at the 5 people you spend most of your time with, be very aware of that, because that is who you're becoming, right? And just the recognition of that, I think, is important.
Yeah, you want to see your future. Look at their bank statements. Look what they do, how they behave. Look how they treat their wives.
Yep.
Are they loyal? Are they good fathers or mothers? That's your future. People around you, that is your future. Yeah.
Mitchell, what would you say with your business now? What's the role you play? What is your leadership style, leadership approach with your team members?
Yeah, I think I'm a leader, but not a manager. It took a while to understand that. My partner is the same way, and so we operate very light. We don't want to have a lot of people in our team. We have a couple employees, and the goal, I think, is really to create a lifestyle business, a business again that fulfills the purpose of being good dads, good husbands, having time freedom and flexibility. And so we're not a syndication group with 30 or 40 employees that we need to sort of manage and or close enough deals to feed. So we're pretty light. We do our best to buy properties that don't take a lot of lift, that don't take a ton of time, but still have upside, as well as maintain a team that's small and efficient.
Yeah. And I think you're really aligned with the group on that. And again, you said it, like, lifestyle business to support, your spouses, your family, and you're clear on your priorities and where business fits. You're not saying it's after family. It's to support that right now. 100%. Not that you're not doing good things with it either, by the way. Like, you still should have purpose around what you're doing within your business. It's just ensure that it is in support of the different areas of life would be my point there. So, what do you think is going to be like the key to your success moving forward?
I'm always thinking about this because while I've done great things, I've also made mistakes in my business. I think one of the mistakes I've made and a lot of people make is just being distracted. Shiny object syndrome, getting away from your highest and best use for you personally. Over this last year or so, we've had, crazy interest rates. We've had the commercial market's been through a lot. During that time, I think it's like there's been a little bit of distraction. Like, hey, well, commercial real estate's slow. Do we go buy a business? Do we go, focus in other areas? I think looking forward, the Mitchell 2.0 is a lot more focused. And what I think that, like, for me personally, finding deals, underwriting deals, as far as my business goes, that's my core focus. But when you look at a full day, how much am I actually doing that?
Yep.
I think that can improve greatly. And so I think that everybody has like a unique core sort of like competency. And if they're in that, then they're using their time in the most wise way. But when they get outside of that, it's costing them.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think it's deal finding. For other people in other industries or whatever, it might be a different skill set. But it's kind of like that analogy where, the nursing staff and everybody prepares the patient, and you come in and you do your one cut. And I think I've been distracted with everything, with a lot of other things.
Yeah.
So for me going forward, the 2.0 is getting very, very laser focused on what I do best, my highest sort of dollar producing activity.
Yeah. And I think for any business leader, understanding your unique skills and then unique skills that move the needle on the business, right? So like unique skills to be tactical things, I don't think is what we're talking about. Like, and I've heard this before, like there's three major things a business leader should be doing: vision, culture, and deal flow, revenue growth, acquisitions, whatever it is. And you're focusing, you talked about the deal flow and focusing on that, given the industry that we are in is extreme. That's how you're going to grow the business and what your focus needs to be. And I think it's part of your unique skill set, but there's 95% of our day oftentimes are not focused on those things that are really moving the needle. So, figuring out ways to leverage other people, technology, whatever it is, to help with those other tasks, because your organization, your business needs you to focus on the big needle movers. You're only helping your team members or others if you're moving the needle, right? So I think there's a misperception, because I think a lot of leaders think they need to show they're doing everything. And there's an element of, okay, I can do that. But to move the needle and help support your team and your organization, you need to really, literally focus on the needle moving activities.
Yeah, I think the right people on the bus in the right seats, it's that, I can't remember what book that was, Good to Great. I think it's Good to Great. They talk about that. But that also includes the leaders of the business. What seat are you in? Where are you most skilled? For us, we're not a management heavy company. We don't have a lot of people in our team. So it's really like, each employee has agency to make decisions, to be a leader in themselves. And so with that, we're able to really dive into our own core competency, what we're good at. We don't have sort of layers of management because we don't have a ton of employees. So, but yeah, I mean, tactically speaking, that for me, that's probably deal hunting. For my partner, Travis, I think he's, you look at like capital raising, like, in the past, we've focused maybe 10 or 15% of time on that. Like, what happens when you focus 50% or more?
Right.
Well, your growth is going to be that much faster, which, by the way, that growth turns into more freedom, more time, more fulfilling your purpose. So
and what I like about the culture comment, or you said, employees are the leaders, it's not super heavy, but it also, the culture you're building of your organization is supporting the purpose of your organization, which is to support your lifestyle, so can support your family. Like, it's all in the line. Domino. It's all very well planned out on how the different strategies within the business support the holistic lifestyle that you're trying to create. So I love it. If you step back and reflect and just really think about what you do, what you've done, the impact you've had, the book is impacting people, the mastermind group you guys have created. How does what you do, how does it make you feel?
I get chills, because I think that when I think about that, I think about me at 28, 27, not having the time for my family, for my little ones, not having my health very, on the road all the time. I think about people that don't have the freedom or are in a job where they have very little time. They're not fulfilling their core purpose, and they're not able to focus on the things that matter, like health and wealth, relationships, spirituality. Like, they're not able to do that. So I think I get chills because, when we started to get a lot of success, part of the reason for the book, the mastermind, the educational piece, was like, I know there's people that were in my exact position that would love to find something to sort of break the connection between time and money, where they can go out and create value in the marketplace and therefore create time in their lives.
Yes.
So I feel like our, teaching the fundamentals of real estate, teaching what we do, communicating what we've done, for those who want it, it can be life-changing.
Yeah.
Truly life-changing.
I love that. Man, that's a good answer. And again, I think it's clear that I think as you, your purpose will change over time. Right now, it's it's meaningful work you're doing, but with a culture and there's a strategy behind how it supports your family and like your other elements of your life too. So it's so well designed. And I just want to congratulate you guys for what you've done, and Mitchell, just for the leadership that you have. And it's really, really neat. Outside of your book, we're going to come back to that and how people can find out more about you. What is one of the most impactful books or podcast, whatever it is that you've how have you educated yourself that you've read or listened to?
Well, I got to go back to Rich Dad Poor Dad. That's I'm sure you hear that answer a lot. That was one of the first ones that really grabbed me and just shook me. It just kind of shook me at my core. I looked at things differently. There's been a lot of, Think and Grow Rich was another one, really on just sort of like almost like manifestation. And I could probably name 4 or 5 of them.
Think and Grow Rich is a great one. It's like got the attractive title, but there's so many mindset things within that book. It's so deep, and you can read it again and just, keep peeling the onion back even more. So those are some great recommendations.
I'll tell you one. This isn't a podcast, but it's a short story, and I'll keep it quick because I know we might be pressed for time here. But when I was in the trailer in the KOA, and I was burning money trying to figure it out, I started selling real estate, and I wanted to break into the investment world, but I was struggling. We were up at the Seattle market with some family up there, and we're touring around. I had my little baby and my wife and everything. And this gentleman, who's probably 70, 75 years old, walks up and he asks, he's got this plate and he goes, "Hey, do you want to try some teriyaki?" So I take a piece of teriyaki and I go, "Oh, this is great. Whatever, "Oh, do you work here?" He goes, "Well, no, I'm starting this. This is my startup, and I'm breaking into this space." And he started talking. I said, "Well, what's your past look like?" And he goes, "Well, I had a restaurant before and I sold it, and then now I'm starting a new one." And I'm like, "What restaurant was that?" And he goes, "Have you ever heard of Red Robin?" And I go, "Yeah, I have." And so I think we all have. And so I said, "Hey, would you talk to me for a second?" Because I was kind of at this low in my life.
Yeah.
And he pulls me to the side and we talk, and he starts telling me his stories. And he goes, "There was one point in my life that I lived in like South Seattle in this house, and it was leaking. Our roof was leaking. It was like literally like my wife and I were like had buckets across the entire home. We had to buy new buckets like weekly to catch new drips, right?" And he tells me this whole story. And he goes, "And I asked my wife, I said, look, we can either fix the roof or we can start this restaurant, Red Robin. What should we do?" And his wife, just like my wife, said, "Let's start the restaurant."
Yeah.
And he said, "We built the restaurant. We sold it for millions of dollars." He goes, "And now I live on the water in Seattle in this big, huge home with glass walls, and I see out to the bay, and it's gorgeous." And he goes, "And you know what all my wife and I talk about?" I go, "What?" He goes, "Catch and rain, man. Catch and rain. For years, and we just talk about the time when we were in the house, running around with buckets."
That's
he goes,
awesome.
"So have fun, relax, and have fun."
Yeah.
So I think you asked what the book was or podcast. I think that story, I still get chills because he just fundamentally changed the way I look at everything. I realized that I should not be in a hurry and enjoy every moment, whether you're struggling and you're catching rain or you're living in a house on the bay. So
and I
anyway,
think
I just wanted to mention that.
That's amazing. I think we've all had those stories of, our own catching rain stories, whatever that is. And it's so easy to look back at those stories, especially if that was 10 years ago, and like laugh and chuckle about it, or be like, "Man, that was amazing. That was impactful." But when that just happened this morning, it doesn't feel like that, Mitchell. It doesn't feel like that in the moment. But the more we can build our mindset around failures and challenges are lessons, and they're going to be memories as well that we're going to look back on and say, "Look how much we grew." And I think that's why, you don't look for failure, but you need to be willing to have the courage to take action, knowing that there will be setbacks, there will be challenges, there will be obstacles, there will be failures. And man, you're going to learn a lot from those things. So I love it, man. Mitchell, this was so much fun. I appreciate it. Just a lot of ground covered. How can people find out more about you?
Yeah, go to 0to100tribe.com. So 0 to and then the number 100tribe.com. That's the best place. You can connect with me there. I'm not a big Instagrammer, so that's going to be your spot.
Awesome. Make sure you check it out. We'll put that in the show notes for sure. Mitchell, appreciate it very much. For the Purpose Matrix, signing off.